Have you ever wondered if evolution made humankind? This is the question that I ask myself, and actually, you know what? It's kind of easy to answer. You see, evolution, if you're talking about the modern evolution theory, which is based on the random mutations, then you will find out that it's quite easy to anticipate what kind of results we're going to get because everything or every feature that a human body has depends on how much it contributes to your survival, which means that if you take, for example, design of your arm or a hand, then you will see that every particular part of the hand will depend on how much it contributes to your survival. This means that the quality and the efficiency of different parts of the arm will depend upon how much it contributes on your survival, which quite easy to check because you know what? So there we go. So on the other hand, if the origin of the humankind is, for example, engineering, then you would have a very good consistency. For example, when you're talking about the Lamborghini, for example, and you take a car and you receive a really beautiful car, which is luxurious, and you would not anticipate some kind of every part of the car it's luxurious and there's a perfection. It has a really good quality. You do not anticipate to find out a wooden seat or maybe wheels made from wood or from sticks. You anticipate the same quality over the engineered design. The same thing happens, for example, in ChatGPT. You do not anticipate the answers from artificial intelligence to be one that sounds like a granny, and the second paragraph sounds like an average human, and the third paragraph was made like a 5-year-old boy. So you expect a consistency of the result. This is exactly how we engineer the things. So if I'm looking on my arm, I would definitely see that, the different parts of the arm contribute to your survival in different portions. For example, maybe the grabbing is the most important one, and to move fingers like this is not really that important as the first action. On the other hand, different fingers have different contribute to the survival to the different ratio. So what we expect to see from evolution is that is based on random mutations, that there's a difference in quality and precision and how good the joints are made. So you anticipate a lot of differences. When you look at the arms from engineering perspective, and if they would be made by engineering, then you would anticipate a consistency of the product. So every joint will have similar quality, and every joint will be spectacular as any other joint, regardless of how they contribute to your survival. So if I'm going to look in my actually the arm design is extremely good from engineering perspective. Maybe you didn't think about this way, but there are ligaments that are connected from 3 segments of your finger all throughout, and they're connected to the internal part of the arm. On the other hand, the ligaments that are on the upper side of the finger are connected throughout the arm and are connected to the upper side of the arm, which is insane. And by the way, when you pull out your fingers, you don't see a ligaments to pull your skin, which is insane. How it was done this way, this is extremely good design. So if I'm looking for evidence, for example, everybody knows that we were made by evolution, and we were made by random mutation. So obviously, when I'm looking at the arm, I am about to see differences in quality of different joints and different fingers, and we'll see some of them are made not exactly at the same quality and the same perfection as any other. So let's take a look. For example, this joint, and you know what? I don't see. It looks kind of consistent. How so? That is very interesting. I don't understand, but we were made by evolution, right? Maybe not. Here's the thing. This is why I wrote this book. That's the question that I had, and I had to write this book on the origin of humankind, where I was asking this exact question, but I wanted to know for sure if we were made by evolution or we were made by engineering. And results are stunning. We were not made by evolution, which was based on random mutations. It seems that either there was some kind of engineering sequence, or we are consistently engineered throughout our lifetime, or some segments. But it seems that mutations, there is some probability that some portion of mutations, which I cannot really define, but it's enough to shape your body the way it looks like, are engineered. How it's made and how it's actually done, I don't know. But I can prove, and actually there are a lot of engineering metrics which can show if we are made by evolution or by engineering. I'll give you a couple of examples. One of them is a combination of symmetry and asymmetry. For example, in engineering, when we engineer something like a car, we will engineer it symmetrical from the outside. However, from the inside, you'll find the engine which is completely asymmetrical. But we will make sure that the center of gravity is always there. We need the symmetry of the car for the because it's easier to calculate the forces of the air, how they are distributed throughout the car. So it's very easier to make the shape of the car symmetrical. However, there are a lot of components in the car which are not symmetrical, like a wheel on one side, all of the electrical components of oil system, the engine, and everything else. So if you look at the body design, will look the same way. Will look symmetrical from the outside. However, when you look at the inside, your heart, your lungs, your organs are all asymmetrical, just like the car, which is phenomenal how actually it was done. And it indicates that human body was engineered, because if you're looking from the evolution perspective, you would anticipate everything to be either symmetrical or everything to be not symmetrical, but it's not the case. And there are all kinds of other metrics which can be measured, and I have about 15 written in the book. One of them, for example, is how many attempts of mutations you need to place, for example, teeth in exactly location where it's supposed to be. And it turns out there are 3 types of mutation that can happen. One of them is beneficial, one of them is harmful, then the mutation will disappear. But there is a third kind, when there's no exact benefit, but there's no exact harm. So it's like neither beneficial nor harmful. And those mutations would stay with proportional, with the same proportion to the population as they were made. And you would anticipate hundreds of thousands of attempts, and some of those attempts you would have some kind of teeth somewhere in your body. Maybe some small, some big, some would kill you, but some would not. But actually, throughout the body, you cannot find even a single teeth. anywhere. They don't exist. So the absence of these neither beneficial nor harmful mutations actually points out to engineering and not to the random mutations, which is insane. If you have, I was just like you, I was asking myself a question: are we made by engineering, or we are made by evolution? And if we are made by evolution, then how can I verify it? And actually, as you can see, just by example of your arm, you can actually anticipate specific results because of this algorithm of random mutation and selection. And as we can see, it just doesn't go well for evolution. This means that we were probably not made by random mutations. Actually, I like Darwin really, really well, and I will explain why. It's because he just let go to all of the beliefs. He collected all of the data and tried to figure out what does it mean, what we can anticipate. I'll give an example. I didn't read his entire book, but just a couple of paragraphs, which I listened to the audiobook, was enough to say he's way ahead of everybody who is now writing about evolution. He was just 2 or 3 levels ahead, just by just purely laying down the facts and making conclusions. This was so well written book, and I think this is why this book is so really highly regarded, and I truly think he's the GOAT. Now, he discovered that when we adopted dogs, for example, and we started to make them as household animals, then we kind of participated in their selection, and we made about hundreds of breeds, and we made it in a very short period of time. So he said the same algorithm that how we can shape the evolution of dogs is actually exist in the wild. So he made extrapolation and said, well, something very similar happens in the wild, and not only in dogs. For example, all of the food that we are eating, it was all made throughout selection process. So there is some kind of mutations or variations that happened in those things, but are they really connected to random mutations? That's an interesting question, because at the moment when Darwin wrote his book, nobody knew about mutations or DNA, including himself. He wrote the book in 1959. It was published throughout the world, and for almost 100 years, nobody knew about what DNA does. In fact, DNA as through microscope was seen only about 10 years later, in 1869, but nobody knew what it was. It was a collection of chromosomes and nuclei, and nobody actually knew what it was doing. Only about 94 years later, if I'm not wrong, in 1953, it was discovered. It first proposed that DNA could be used, is actually used to describe proteins, which made really huge news back then. And only then scientists were confused how we actually evolve, and what exactly they did. They proposed that we are made by random mutations, but here's some kind of fundamental problem, because how did they actually conclude so? Because the book of Charles Darwin was very descriptive about how he makes his conclusion, how he draws them, and how he makes all his logic is well laid down, and you can actually prove everything he says and see how it actually acts. However, there is a broken link between saying between observing mutations that look random and concluding with evidence saying that they are random. In fact, I would argue it's impossible to make so. For example, if you take, for example, a sequence of the pi number, and you're looking at the numbers, and you will show to anybody and say, do you think those numbers are random? Can you prove that? If there was any option to prove that those numbers are random, then somebody would came up and would say, hey, actually it's not random, it's pi, and this ratio, I can calculate every single number that continues there. And here's a problem. If anybody would be able to say that this sequence that looks random is random, then nobody would able to come afterwards and say, no, it's actually a pi, and I can prove you and can show you the rest of the sequence. So you either can have one of two. You either can prove that pi is not random at some point of time, and which can be later on, or you could show some kind of sequence that looks random and say it is random, and to have some kind of proof. But it means it actually mathematically seems that there's no way to look at the sequence which looks random to prove that is actually random. So the conclusion that scientists made that mutations are random is a speculation. It's a belief, which makes it a very significant component, which actually says, you know what? The evolution actually is based on random mutation, is actually religion, because they believe that mutations are random, which is really strange circumstances that I have found. However, this is not true for the early findings of the Darwin. And I would say that if you read my book, I can tell you that actually it is a combination. It is evolution, but it's not driven by random mutations. It is evolution that is driven by with the main component of engineering effort, or you could say a computation. And I don't know where it's coming from. I can prove it exists, and I can prove it affects how we look, but I don't know where it's coming from. I hope this was very interesting, and I hope that we have a lot to discuss in the future, and maybe you will see, for sure you will see more videos like this. Thank you.